Following on 2 points on the last Direct, you mentioned that console games like Dragon's Dogma 2 still release with weird frame rate decisions that could be enhanced by relatively simple tweaks. You also again praised SteamOS for giving users PC gaming options in a console-like container, specifically the side menu for scaling and frame rate options. Is it time for console makers to offer similar functionality of locking frames and refresh rates in a simple menu? They could call it a dev menu and have it be quote-unquote experimental until the end of time to pretend it like it's not a real option. It's kind of like the Here Be Dragons thing that was attached to PlayStation 4 Pro Boost Mode. Oliver, I'm going to go to you first on this. Inbuilt console frame rate limiters. Do you think it's a good thing, and do you think it's actually able to be implemented?
I think it's a cool idea. I think it should be implementable. It's just a system call. I don't see why it wouldn't be. I do think there's a lot of room for tweaks like this. I would wonder, the only thing I'd wonder about is input latency, right? Because some of these frame rate limiters, especially on like the Steam Deck, and I believe what we've heard about from about the Sony system level frame rate limiter, and maybe the Microsoft one as well, is that they can induce some bad input latency, and we've seen that. You see that on the PC side as well.
Yeah, it's basically buffering frames, right?
Yeah. So that would be my concern. But I think that like if developers aren't handling this stuff in the way that we would prefer, because you can't expect everyone to handle it in the way that we would prefer or like are the best practices, especially from certain, I would say, not to stereotype, but certain Japanese developers don't tend to go with this trend. Obviously, you've got you've got Capcom. Certain developers tend to have different views on this stuff, and I would certainly like to see something like this introduced just because of those edge cases.
Right. Mm-hmm. Interesting points. Alex, thoughts on this one? I'll just to interject just quickly, my viewpoint on it is that possibly doable on Xbox because it's using DirectX. PlayStation, I'm not sure about because it's a thinner API as I understand it, and more to the point, sometimes developers integrate their own frame rate caps, which may not be done on a system level, which may cause problems if they're kind of like married up to a system level integration there. Curious what you think about this though.
Also, like I was going to mention that I think it's completely doable from the Xbox side, actually. The one thing I always think about with PlayStation is that I think if a game is using VSync and it isn't like manually coding its VSync, and I think game developers do that though. Pretty sure the Call of Duty series does. That's why they always have weird tearing that doesn't seem to be, like it's not like a system call. It's only tearing to a certain part of the screen. Usually they're deciding when to flip, not the,
I think that is actually maybe a system thing on Xbox. I'm not 100% sure.
It may be a system thing on Xbox, but I think for the PlayStation side, as long as it's using VSync and they are letting the console decide whether or not VSync is on, which I think a lot of games are probably doing, I imagine Sony could say, okay, what type of VSync is this? We can just dupe the call from our side, from the OS side with the flip. So I think that should be possible. The other thing, though, I don't think is as possible, like the other 120 hertz thing, which is why the low frame rate compensation stuff doesn't work on Sony without it being manually implemented. I don't know, but I would also love to see a Steam OS style. You hit the back button, hold it longer or something. And then you all of a sudden get a menu that says, okay, you're in VRR. Would you like to limit to 48 FPS? And you say yes. I think that'd be great.
It would be nice to have VRR on Steam Deck, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But I was just saying like the console experience.
I get what you mean. Yeah. I think it would be tricky because the whole point of a console, and it is kind of more applicable, I think, based on what developers have said in the past to us, it is kind of like low-level access to the silicon, and there's no guarantees that it will work or not. There is actually a bit of software that Illusion did for PlayStation 5 for exploited consoles that allow you to use the system-level VSync options, and I'm presuming that would include the 30 FPS option. And I believe it only works on some games, so it could be a bit more problematic there. Are there any other options beyond frame rate limiters that you think would be nice based on the Steam Deck experience? I'm guessing probably not.
System level integer scaling? that should be doable.
That should be doable just off the, it should just be a dashboard option. That shouldn't actually be actually, it could be game specific DRS, stuff like that. Some developers like to use
even FSR1 for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
I don't know.
If I could set it to
maybe for FSR Rebirth.
give me a 1080p image and then just scale it themselves, that'd be nice. But.
Sure. Okay. I could see that. I think integer scaling, I think that, maybe more refresh rate control.
Right.
I don't know. Right. Because, there's that weird allow 50 hertz option, which applies to movie content, or what does it even apply to anymore in the Xbox menu? Like, what does it seriously apply to?
Possibly there are 50 hertz Blu-ray movies.
Possibly. But the fact that they do that is interesting. And the fact that they've, in the past, turned on triple buffering for back compat titles and...
Yeah,
there's
a lot going on there, but there's a lot of curation as well, I think.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think of anyone, Microsoft could do it, and they've supported like experimental stuff in the past before, so I think they could do it.
Yeah,
I've just got sort of visions of the Microsoft ATG team listening to this and going, no, he doesn't understand.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, at that point, but like, man, just all those options, they're great. Hide them in a menu that you have to like enter the Konami code to get into if you're afraid of people using it. I would be fine with that. Give the power user something to do that is fun.
It would be fun, but ultimately, if you're really into this stuff, I mean, the bottom line is a console is supposed to be a curated experience, and we're kind of suggesting here, the curation isn't particularly good on some titles, and it could be better. Whereas the whole point of a PC is that they aren't particularly sort of targeting specific hardware with game code. And it does require, in some states, the idea that the user can intervene.